Who's the new guy on the right? Hey everybody, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 445 and recorded on April the 12th, 2017. I'm Ryan Schraub.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Valentano.
Fantastic. I'm so glad to be back. Or here for the first time.
He was saving that just for you.
For the first time.
I'm so excited.
I'm excited to be back here with you too, Josh. I missed you so much. Missed you.
Yeah.
We have some stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk about Ryzen 5. That's going to be the vast majority of our conversations, I think. We also have a buyer's guide to get to. And we're going to mention the Fragging Frogs VLAN summary. I did have this. We found this on one of the shelves, and we were trying to find space for other things. This is the original Intel NUC box. This is a Core i3 model, I believe. Is that right?
I think it was an i5.
Nope, Core
Didn't
i3.
throw that away already?
I don't throw anything
Didn't have
away,
video
Josh.
You
Unfortunately.
with like 30 boxes struggling to go to the dumpster.
30, my butt. There's been a lot more than 30. This had USB 2, HDMI, and Thunderbolt. So we were using this for a very long time as our file server. But it is Windows 8 compatible. One of my favorite things about this packaging that they don't do anymore, and I'm very disappointed. I know Alan listens to this show, so I hope he's listening. Not you. It does. It's going to be a little bit of a letdown now because of this.
The battery's dying.
Battery is dying.
So it turns into
It's
a rap
supposed to
song.
play the Intel jingle, and it almost gets there.
Yeah, can't make it all the way.
That was the remix.
See, it takes a little while. It's like the battery needs to rest a little bit longer to get enough oomph to even get over the edge.
Uh-huh.
But now you just get this nice.
Remix edition.
But they don't do that for the NUCs anymore, and I'm a little disappointed.
So that scared the crap out of you the first time you opened it up?
I would say scared the crap out of me is maybe an exaggeration.
Oh dear, he's taking it apart now. Just pull out the thing.
It's taped. I want to get.
It's
getting
longer mint
worse.
condition.
It's getting worse.
This is a great audio podcast.
It's gotten worse, everybody.
It's ticking. Now it's a cricket that only knows one note.
Okay,
What kind of batteries
Is
does it take?
Open it further.
I'm waiting for the remix
Man,
version
it's got
of
4
this.
cells in there? Oh, 2. No.
No, it's 3.
It's like 3.
And I can't turn it off.
Wait, when did we get an 808 on the podcast?
Yeah, what was
Everybody
it?
needs an 808.
Where's the light
button?
sensor? There's a light sensor.
Oh, it was a light sensor?
Yeah, see?
It's like a cricket.
This does make for great audio show, I'm sure. I'm just going to hold this the rest of the day and
Put it in the
see.
box and close it.
It's a non-user replaceable
There,
battery.
Stick it in there.
To get a star off on a review.
Yeah, if this were a
Throws the box away, it's just gonna hold it.
if this were an iFixit summary, this would get a 0.
Ease
for
of repairability.
Would be minimal. I don't know. Yeah, it's cardboard. All right. So anyway, that's how we're starting the show. Welcome everybody.
Still holding it.
We record the show on Wednesday nights. It is Wednesday night now, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific at PCPer.com/live. Thank you everybody who joins us. You get to hang out in the chat room and see all the funny before and after stuff that happens, or this. It doesn't.
Still doing it.
I don't know exactly where the light sensor is.
It's all the gap between your fingers.
But yeah, it's clearly not. Wow, it's really sticky.
Remember,
Easy,
you
guys.
asked for this.
Easy, guys.
Battery powered and sticky, huh?
So if you need
And it's
a
in your left hand.
reminder for
It's that
our
friendly
live stream,
stranger.
go to PCPer.com/subscribe and get this little notification list here. Or you sign up for a notification list with your name and your email address, and we'll send you a note when we're about ready to live stream an hour before, 20 minutes before, 2 hours before. It just depends on the day. And if we have any other events that we live stream, you'll be signed up for that. We do a lot of other ones with industry people that maybe give away prizes, so it might be something worth paying attention to. And of course, we still have our Patreon campaign ongoing. This is your way to, if you find any value at all in whatever the hell we do, you can go to patreon.com/PCPer, sign up here, and have a recurring monthly contribution of $1 or $5 or $10 or whatever you want it to be, and you kind of directly contribute to the content we create and Josh in some kind of roundabout way as well, and this podcast as well. So keep that in mind. If you happen to be one of those people that is an ad blocker, which I'm going to say, based on my metrics, approximately 45% of you are. And I know that not 45% of the people that listen to this are subscribing through Patreon. So I'll put that out there. So there is that. And I also wanted to quickly mention, as I go back here and find the page here, Jeremy, talk a little bit about the Fragging Frogs VLAN that happened this weekend. You were able to participate in at least the second half of said event.
Yep. Unfortunately, my Saturday mornings are filled with crap I have to do.
Yeah.
But the afternoon was a lot of fun. The guys got together. We had about 70 unique IPs over the day. At the peak, about 50 of us were playing UT 2K4, of course. A bunch of new stuff like Ghost Recon Wildlands. The SCART from Tarkov just came out of its NDA alpha. Team Fortress 2. By the end of it, we were resorting to the worst games we could think of, which, of course, was Dino D-Day. The only game where you can pee on something as a dinosaur. It's utterly brilliant.
Okay. Interesting.
Come on. It's that bad. But AMD chipped in Ryzen 7 1700s, which we gave away. You guys offered some interesting things, including a slightly used case from Sebastian that ended up with Kali. But also 4 motherboards, a nice mechanical keyboard, one of Mori's giant coolers. So we had a lot of fun. A lot of people ended up with better hardware than they started out with. And hey, we will be doing another one. So keep an eye out on the front page. If not, just join up with the Fragging Frogs, because Lenny does a lot of work for this, but he also does work every week to make sure that there's at least a couple of games going on. Sign up, TeamSpeak. It's just fun.
Indeed. Oh, I forgot to mention from the Patreon campaign, if you are a new patron and or you increase your patronage, I will see an email come through on my phone and I will read your name and thank you on the live stream. So keep that in mind.
Gee, is that a new thing?
Well, I don't think so.
Cutting edge.
And based on this sound,
Oh, it made it all,
It made it all the way
you warmed up the
through.
battery with your hand.
oh yeah,
Ha.
now it's never
Science.
going to stop. So now that means it's time to talk about AMD. I guess. I guess I didn't think that through very well. That is the chime for moving on to the next story. So let's talk about Ryzen 5. So this is actually really annoying now. It stuck to my hand. There we go. Look at that.
How'd you make it not?
Made us in. I think the light sensor's on the bottom. So Ryzen 5 launched this week. This is AMD's second series or family of processors based on Zen. Ryzen 5 is lower cost, lower performance, lower core count than what we saw in Ryzen 7, as the name might say, indicate. Also, the name might indicate that its primary competition is Intel's Core i5 line of processors. Ryzen 7 against Core i7, Ryzen 5 against Core i5. Clearly, somebody has been thinking. We've talked about kind of the general specs of what Ryzen 5 processors are because they've announced them, but it's worth going over it again real quickly. There's the 1600X, the 1600, the 1500X, and then the 1400. 6-core, 6-core, 4-core, 4-core in that order, all with SMT enabled. So a 6-core has 12 threads and a quad-core has 8 threads, which is that's a significant delta over what Intel has on their Core i5 line. The Core i5 7600K, which is the highest end Kaby Lake Core i5 part, priced competitively with the Ryzen 5 1600X. That is a quad-core 4-thread, so they do not have hyperthreading enabled on their parts. Now, and you can see that here in this line of the table. So what that means is, if you buy a Ryzen 5 1600 or 1600X, you are getting 3 times the threading capability with the Ryzen 5 than you are with the 7600K. And if you buy a quad core, you're getting 2x the threading capability. Now, threads does not mean cores. You're not going to get 3x the performance. You're not going to get 2x the performance with the 1500X or 1400. But you will see some significant improvements on multi-threaded applications and workloads, right? Just out of the gate, by default. And the clock speeds are relatively competitive as well. The 7600K is still the highest clocked part, 200 megahertz higher on the base and the boost. compared to the 1600X. But the 1600X is running at the same base and turbo clocks as the 1800X, which was the 8-core 16-thread part from the Ryzen 7 line. And it has the same amount of cache as well, similar TDPs, but that was a $499 part. This is a $249 part. So for half the money, you're getting 25% fewer cores at the same clock speed. So you can kind of just automatically you start to think like, okay, this is where the performance per dollar benefit really comes into play.
That's where you're getting into the sweet spot.
Right, for Ryzen for sure. So $249 for the 1600X, $219 for the 1600, $189 for the 1500X, and $169 for the 1400. So we're getting into the sub $200 processors. Our comparative parts from Intel are the 7600K, 7600, 7500, and 7400. Although all I really tested here was the 7600K and the 7500, as those are the ones that were priced up best with the two parts that AMD sent me, the 1600X and the 1500X.
Just out of curiosity, what is the cheapest 6-core Intel part?
It's, what is it, 380?
Oh, it'll be an i7.
Like 380?
It's it's an i7 on the Broadwell E platform, so it's an X99 system, right?
Yeah. So to even get 6 cores on the Intel side, you're getting close to doubling the cost.
Yeah. Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a big difference there.
Yeah.
Core count doesn't mean everything. IPC is still important. You know, we'll go through that in the performance part of our discussions. It's also worth noting that the AMD B350 chipset. So the Ryzen, all the Ryzen processors out there today support both the X370 and the B350 chipset. X370 and B350 have very similar specifications. And Josh, correct me on this if you think I'm missing any of it. You're wrong. The B350 does not support multi-GPU. And it has, I think, 4 fewer USB 3.0 ports.
And I believe fewer SATA ports.
Okay.
I think 2 fewer.
2 fewer. Other than that, that's it. Like B350, you can still overclock. You can still change memory speeds and performance. They don't hold you back in any of those particular ways. If you look at what Intel has with the Z270 versus the B250 chipset, you want to talk about confusing things, right? B250, B350, those are not the same platforms.
Right.
So the B250 chipset from Intel doesn't support overclocking, CPU or memory.
Or AMD.
Or AMD, yes. It also does not support overclocking AMD processors.
You cannot plug the AMD processor into that board. That's true.
So, you know,
Sebastian can, but
you can only do it once. So it's interesting because one of AMD's things was they wanted to talk about, hey, our platform is more robust at the same dollar amount than Intel's. I will say that because of the abundance of Z270 motherboards out there, you can get some pretty low-cost Z270 motherboards.
Yeah.
And so...
I have to interrupt real quick.
Sure.
Someone reminded us, and I believe this is true, the B350 does not support SLI, but I believe it does support Crossfire.
I think that's the case.
Okay.
Yeah. X370 does both. B350 only one.
But does it do it through the way that Crossfire was supported on like 3-way configurations?
I don't know.
Like through the chipset? Because even if that's the case, I wouldn't recommend going that route. But I'll double check on that. That's a good point. So regardless, I think if you're comparing B350 and B250, AMD has the clear advantage in chipset and like kind of motherboard solutions there, because now B350 has support for M.2 and USB 3.1 and all that kind of modern stuff as well. But because there are more Intel options just by default out there's going to be a lot more options for you to.
Yeah, you can get a Z270 board starting at $100 right now.
Exactly. So the argument of, hey, B350 is better than B250 only takes you as far until you start to see Z270 boards in different configurations at different price points. Now,
is there a difference in supported M.2 configurations between those two chipsets?
The AMD ones?
Yes.
I do not believe so.
Okay.
No. They both should support M.2 PCIe by 3 by 4 lanes. Yeah. Okay. PCIe 3.0 by 4 lanes, yes.
Yep.
On 2 ports? Just
one.
Okay.
They only have one, yeah. Which, I mean, realistically is, they're not supporting Optane, so there's that.
I mean, you can add another one that just like it'd be going a different route.
You can add it into an add-in
slot.
slot too.
You could use
yeah.
like PCIe lanes, just you know.
So before we get into the actual Ryzen 5 benchmarks, I did want to. We added a couple things to this review that I think were not added to the Ryzen 7 review because information and kind of debates and discussions occurred after the fact. The first one being memory speed testing. And if you look at this graph here, please ignore my typo of DDR4 200, which is actually DDR4 2400.
Very, very slow.
It's very slow DDR4 memory.
And
It's
yet it
amazing how
performed
high it
just the same.
performs. Yeah. So basically, I took the 1600X and ran it at DDR4 2133, 2400, 2933, and 3200, and just saw what impact it had on performance. And as you can see here, in like Cinebench single and multi, you know, up to 3%. I'm sorry, 3% faster in the largest scale.
Yeah.
Handbrake, almost no difference. Slice off memory bandwidth, of course. It is a memory bandwidth test, so you're getting
Increasing the memory speed, made the memory bandwidth go up.
It's very weird. I just felt like this needed to be in here. You get a 28% increase going from 2133 memory to 3200 memory.
Okay.
Right, in actual
That's
bandwidth.
probably
So,
just what the proportion
yeah.
works out to. Yeah.
Geekbench here is a little bit more susceptible to the memory bandwidth than other benchmarks show to be, up to 7%. Going from one to the other. But keep in mind, I think 2400 is probably the base that most people like. Nobody's buying 2133 memory at this point. So 2400, so you're going from 3% to 7%. So it's 3 or 4%.
It's all about the base. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
No trouble.
Now Blender, no advantages. So, but now here, the last 4 are games, right? So
Yeah,
Ryzen,
once you get to the games, all of a sudden.
yeah, Rise of the Tomb Raider up to 12%, Hitman 14%, GTA 5 12%, Wildlands almost nothing.
Huh.
And this is what really got me. Like, I was looking through the results, I was like, wow, clearly faster memory, just boom, automatic game performance
then there's a
improvement.
game
But
that
then
it
there's
didn't.
one of the games I looked at where there was no difference.
And so it really just depends on the,
I guess.
something in a gaming workload.
You got to do some contention tests.
Yeah.
Bus contention.
Yeah.
So essentially, how you want to do that, or do you want me to explain how you should do that on air?
No, I mean, I guess not.
Okay.
I mean, so, and also it's worth
We'll
noting,
discuss it later.
even going from 2133 to 2400, you're getting, 6% in Rise of the Tomb Raider, 6% in Hitman. So, you're going up to 14% from that base. So there's clearly a performance delta there. And that's why when AMD came to talk to media, they were talking about, hey, we're going to send you DDR4 3200 memory. And I had this debate going back and forth with them about what I was going to test in like the review part of it.
Yeah.
Right. And I said, look, in my view, this is a budget platform. 3200 memory is more expensive, even if it's only by $20 or $30. $20 or $30 is 20%, to 10 to 20% of your processor price, right? That's a significant delta.
Yeah.
But as 3200 memory, as 2933 memory comes down, this makes a lot more sense, right?
true.
So, and we also tested Windows 10 Power Mode, and we'll talk about a different story that AMD has their own profile that they came out with, but I thought this was interesting. I tested high performance and balance, which should again be the two extremes for AMD on this. This is with the 1500X. And I did a whole bunch of benchmarks, and you'll see a lot of these tests are 0.6%, 0.5%, 1.3%. And that was actually, the balance mode was a little bit faster in those. 1.8% faster in Geekbench. Web Expert showed a 14% performance advantage in high performance. That is a general productivity application benchmark that really thrives on responsiveness, so it kind of makes sense that would be the case. But if you look at everything else, there's a couple of places where balanced is, they're essentially identical within margin of error, right? Yeah. Cinebench single is the only other place where we saw something worth noting, and that's 4.7%. Okay. And that is, honestly, that's the one where AMD said, hey, the scores are different here. This is why we think.
What about the games?
When I go down to the games, we saw 1% in Civ, 3.6% in Tomb Raider, nothing in Hitman, nothing in Ashes, nothing in GTA, nothing in Deus Ex, nothing in Far Cry Primal, and nothing in Wildlands.
So there was some difference, but only in a couple of games.
There was one game, right? Like Civ 6 is 1.3%. I wouldn't count that.
Tomb Raider seems to be such a dang problem child.
Tomb Raider is a problem child, right?
What is
but
going on
it's
with
also
that game?
giving us like interesting windows into the performance discussion, even if it's the case. But if you look at the memory scaling, like Tomb Raider wasn't the only one that showed performance advantages there.
Yep.
Only in the power mode stuff there. So, you know, AMD wanted everybody to test in high power mode. I don't think it's that important, except if you use Cinebench as your benchmark, then you're going to see a difference.
Yeah.
Right. And there may be some slight advantages in like actual, you know, consumer. If you use a lot of Excel and Word and PowerPoint and all this other type of stuff that may be going on. And then finally, in terms of supplementary testing, we did our CCX latency testing.
Yep.
Pinging between cores. We've had this discussion before. We wanted to make sure that two things. One, the CCXs were divided how AMD said they were. 1600X is 3 plus 3. 3 cores on a CCX plus 3 cores on another CCX, 1 disabled on each module.
Okay. And that's definitely what's going on.
It's definitely the case. And the 1500X is 2 by 2. There's not a, sometimes it'll be 3 plus 1, sometimes it'll be 4 plus 0. None of that exists. It's all.
So they just said they're only shipped, like the only way they're going to ship them is. Okay. Well, that's good.
And I also did testing here. You can see this with the 1600X at the same memory speeds, 2133, 2400, 2933, and 3200, because the fabric, the Infinity Fabric, the interconnect inside that connects these two CCX modules runs at the DDR speed.
I think it's half of the DDR speed.
Well, it's half of 2400, but it's 1200 megahertz.
Yeah.
Right. So it's running at the memory speed without the doubling.
Sure.
Right. And this is kind of the result that was interesting to look at. Right. This is the latency between
the CCXs.
module to module.
Yep.
And it decreases pretty dramatically as we increase that memory speed.
Basically proportional to the, or inversely proportional to the.
Yeah.
You know.
And so when you see some of our game result tests at the different things, this is kind of, again, directly proportional to those things, indicating that there's just more, it's more complex than AMD seemed to, I don't want to say seemed to realize, but that they wanted to tell us about up front.
Right.
And then we had to do all this kind of discovery on our own for whatever reason. So there's that. And, you know, for the sake of brevity, I'm going to not talk about all the performance results and just say in single-threaded results, the results look very similar to the Ryzen 7 story.
Yep.
The Core i5 processors and Kaby Lake are better at single-threaded performance workloads, right? Cinebench single, you know, your web experts, your sysmarks, those types of things. You know, the 7600K is going to be ahead of the other parts. But when you get into multi-threaded workloads, like even inside sysmark, something like the data and financial, which is a multi-threaded workload, the 1600X is significantly ahead of the 7600K and the 7500.
Yeah, I mean, it's as if it had 2 more cores.
It's as if it did, but I mean, but even the 1500X has the same number of cores with more, but it has more threads. Yeah. Right. So there's
more threads helps too.
There are benefits there.
You know, it being a hyper-threaded part versus the Intel part that's not
let's scroll
hyper-threaded.
to the bottom of all this. The as I go to, let me go to the one that
you don't want to read the comments?
Yeah, no, I definitely don't want to read the comments on this. So here, this is a good page. Audacity, single-threaded. Okay, 7600 and 7500, well ahead of the 1600X and the 1500X, right?
Yep.
But let's take a look at, let's see, X264 right here, right? X264 encode. Now these, you know, the 7600K is running 54 frames per second versus 88 frames per second on the 1600X. That is more cores, more threads. And even the 1500X with the same number of cores, yes, it has twice the threads. So it's winning by, I don't know, let's see, 6. So we'll say, you know, 10%, 8% or something like that. But it's ahead, and the 1500X is a way less expensive part than the 7600K is. So it's impressive from anything that is multi-threaded, like look at the Blender workloads. How much less time it takes than the Core i5 does. If you're a budget guy who wants, you know, you want to get into game development, you're doing stuff for work or for school, right? You're going to have an advantage. Now, obviously, we included these results here for like the 1800X and the 7700K just for comparison's sake. They're going to be faster. They're the more expensive platform. But clearly, the 1600X and the Ryzen 5 parts have some solid results there. And then in terms of gaming, we kind of already showcased this on the previous page. We went from 4 games to 8 games in the Ryzen 5. We only tested 4 games quickly in the Ryzen 7. We did 8 games in the Ryzen 5 test. and some of them we didn't have time to run. I was out of town all week, so I only brought the Ryzen 5 hardware with me to test. And it looks better than the Ryzen 7 did in some instances because it has the core thread count advantage over the competing Intel parts, right? So like Deus Ex, Mankind Divided, 1080p, very high, no delta at all, right?
Yeah, it's basically identical.
Yep. Far Cry Primal, interesting because the 7600K was consistently faster than the 7500, even though they don't differ by very much on, they have the same core and thread count, but clock speeds, they're pretty different.
Yeah.
Right. So, GTA 5, the Ryzens are behind. Hitman, the Ryzens are a little bit ahead. Rise of the Tomb Raider, the Ryzens are behind. Ghost Recon, a little bit behind, but not a whole lot.
It's as if it's like a truly competitive thing.
It is. So here would be my summation of performance.
Win some, lose some, like
single-threaded applications, Ryzen 5 loses. Yep. Multi-threaded applications, Ryzen 5 wins by a lot.
Yeah.
Like it's not close.
If the thing is using enough threads where it needs the extra threads, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. If multi-threaded, it wins.
Yep.
Clearly. Gaming, the Intel parts still have the edge, but it's not by as much.
Yeah.
Right? It's a little bit more muted than it was on the Ryzen 7 side.
Because we're comparing the lower cost Intel parts.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the Ryzen 5 performance doesn't really change a whole lot inside that window. So, talking about comments, Josh, a lot of people in the comments didn't like my review. I thought it was very positive, and it's basically the summation was that. It's pretty good at gaming, but if you want the best gaming, it's still Intel's Core i5 line in this segment.
Yeah.
If you do anything multi-threaded, it's stupid to buy anything else. Like if you can get 6 cores and 12 threads for the same price as 4 threads,
yeah,
don't do that.
Exactly.
Or do that. Don't buy the Intel one.
Right.
So
it's definitely the most cores and threads for your money. There's no doubt about it. I mean, there's just no way around it.
AMD was very aggressive in this. You kind of almost look at this and go, had AMD launched with this or all of it at once, which maybe would have been too much for people to kind of digest.
Nobody would have bought 7.
That's probably true.
And plus, there would just be like no motherboards available anywhere.
That's true as well. Yeah. Motherboard availability was already an issue, but it's this to me was like the lead step, right?
Yeah.
Like this is your best foot, right? Because this is the price segment where the majority of people are buying. This is the one that's going to get the most attention in forums and on Reddit and all those different places where these communities can kind of get together and discuss it. There's the least question marks about performance here versus Ryzen 7. But there is something very compelling about launching with a $500 part that beats a $1,000 part from your competitor.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what the 1800X really was. So Ryzen 5, it's available. It's out there for sale now.
So
I didn't see it's
one more point about this is that even though the DX12, one of the DX12's examples that we were using is a problem child, Tomb Raider, right? You could probably flip that argument around, and as opposed to saying avoid DX12 or something, like DX12 is still a good thing for even this CPU. Someone that buys Ryzen 5, some new DX12 title comes out that's not a problem child, that loads the CPU less because it's DX12, properly optimized game, right, would probably do just as well on Ryzen 5 as it did on the Intel parts. In other words, they're like moving forward, your games are probably going to be less likely to show you, such a difference based on CPU.
I would think so. Remember, it's so interesting because you look at AMD, and when it was Radeon Group talking about it, DX12 was super important because it was going to show the benefits, for their lower end processors, and the whole platform as a whole was going to scale up better with it. And with Ryzen, you have more cores and more threads. So in theory, better threading at the engine level,
that's true too,
and the API level would be a benefit.
Yeah,
there's just other stuff going on that keeps that from being the case currently
today,
right?
Yeah,
AMD showed the ashes of the Singularity stuff, that they could get engine adjustments, they could see improvements. Whether or not that can be applied, not necessarily globally, but to a wider range of games and game engines is yet to be seen. I think that's really the proof point that they need to get across.
Yep.
They need somebody else other than Ashes to come out and do it. They need, if you could get Unreal Engine to show a 25% improvement on Ryzen processors, you basically win.
Yeah.
the internet.
Well, they're probably pushing Unreal pretty hard.
It's all about relationships, right?
optimize, yeah.
I mean, it's and you're talking about moving a much more mammoth beast.
Yeah.
You know, it's what's the largest ships are the hardest ones to move, right? And Epic and Unreal is the largest ship in the ocean, for sure.
Well,
So-
I mean, they're going to have pressure from more than just AMD as people buy these CPUs and start to use them. Like when the
Not
community
enough.
starts to
Not
pressure
enough.
you.
I mean, not
No?
enough. No.
Well, you don't think it'll... Eventually, it's going to happen. I'm not saying right now, like tomorrow, they're going to release a big
Not
patch
this
for
year.
Unreal Engine.
I don't think there's enough community pressure for something to affect this year. There might be other pressures and just opportunity costs there.
Yeah.
For them to take advantage of it. So that's Ryzen 5. Go ahead.
Has there been any more follow-up on the non-NVIDIA benchmarks with Ryzen and Intel,
Non-NVIDIA benchmarks.
where they had the dual RX 480s on Rise of the Tomb Raider and it showed a massive improvement over the 1080 for the Ryzen part?
So you're talking about that there were different performance deltas between Ryzen and Core whatever using a Radeon GPU than an Intel GPU.
I believe it was specifically dual RX 480s where the massive where the difference came up.
When you get into multi-GPU, it's a totally different story, right? And no, I haven't looked at any multi-GPU stuff. I had heard some people complain that like, oh, you need to be testing an RX 40 on this because NVIDIA's drivers suck or something, whatever the accusation was.
If they suck on an Intel CPU, they're just going to suck the same on an AMD CPU.
I don't want to get into it about the debate of...
It's definitely a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Sure, but it's all interesting information to dive into. It's just a matter of picking and choosing with limited resources of time.
In this case, it was not just limited resources and time. It was like a specific configuration for one game.
Yeah.
Like you tested like what 30, 40 different things there in this piece.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You can't spin up a separate test bed and do the install and all that time invested just to like one game. Like that's okay. If somebody wants to do that somewhere on the internet, fine. Let them have at it.
See, I mean, I don't want to dive down the hole, but like, I'm one guy, and maybe we have two guys, maybe three. Like with the Ryzen 7 launch, we had maybe three people doing different things at different times in terms of testing. But there are thousands of people on the internet, as it turns out. All of which
they've got a lot of time.
All of which have computers and time.
They have a lot of time,
right? And
opinions.
In one day, 1,000 people can run a lot more tests than I can run. And so coming into the comments and complaining about I wasn't running A, B, C, and D, I'm like, well, yes. Why don't you run A? Your buddy runs B, and your other guy runs C, and then you report back and tell me, and I'll listen. I may not do anything with it, but I'll at least listen.
That's true,
right?
Speaking of other things we were doing in the office, while you were testing, I
was testing Ryzen 5.
You were testing Ryzen 5.
Yes.
Ken and I were dorking around with the balanced power plan thing.
Yes.
Which basically is just a custom power profile that you add to Windows.
So when you go into your power options in the operating system, you can choose between balance and high performance.
Yep.
This gives you a third option.
Yep.
On a desktop PC, which most people may never have even bothered to touch.
That's the thing. Most people will typically not change that at all.
Right.
Because if you do put it in high performance, it basically just runs your CPU max like all the time.
Right.
Like the regular high performance mode. Like it just, it doesn't spin down, nothing. It you're basically just sucking extra power from the wall for, even when you're completely idle. Like you're asleep at night, your computer's still running.
It's like you're running a heavy duty 3D screensaver.
Basically.
Yes.
Yeah. Even if your computer's just sitting there only showing you the desktop and not doing a thing.
Bring back 3D screensavers.
So since there were differences that, differences in how Windows instructs the CPU to go to different power levels or, when it parks cores, when it does different things, to kind of work around the unique parts of what Ryzen CPUs do that Windows is not yet aware of, they came up with their own power profile that will get you probably 9/10 of the way there.
Right.
It's not the perfect thing. It's not as good as if it was just integrated into Windows and like Microsoft made some changes or something like that. But it gets you most of the way there.
Sure.
And I kind of dove into it. We installed the profile. It's like you could install a power profile into Windows with just like a special kind of data file format. But instead of distributing it that way, it's like It's an installer. It has that power profile that it installs. It just does the work for you because you'd have to like script it to get it in there. And then it has a really tiny executable that just runs like one time. And all that does is it just switches your profile to that profile.
Oh, it does switch it to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes it the active one, right? Because, you know, the average person running this might not even know that there is a place you have to go in Windows to change that thing, right? So it's just run this thing, you know. And AMD did say that they're going to put this in with their, what's the name of their software package for?
Their driver?
Yeah, but it's not a CPU driver per se. It was the other.
Oh, Relive?
Like the chipset drivers? Or
well,
Relive,
I think you install it all through like a graphics-like driver.
Yeah,
Still.
I mean, the plan is for this not to be a standalone thing in the future, just be like, you know, something that's rolled up in that package. It'll just
until they can work with Microsoft and actually integrate it into,
Right.
So I do want to show this. This first table or graph you have here is not data we gathered.
Yes, we did not do that many tests.
This is data that AMD gave us that we then put into a graph form so people could kind of look at it easily.
Yep.
And I want to point this out because I just did a whole thing where I looked at a 1600X in balance and high performance and showed only one or maybe two applications that even noticed a difference. They are showing a whole bunch of applications that show significant differences.
Yep, and we were able to confirm two of them.
The ones in the blue.
The ones that are highlighted blue.
GTA 5 Max.
Yep.
And Ryzen Tomb Raider very high, which is the one I saw in my testing as well.
And so, and don't get me wrong, we tested some other ones that were not on their list that showed no gain, similar to what you saw in your other testing of other games, right?
But I don't want to discount this list because there's a lot of stuff on here. Alien Isolation, Batman Arkham Knight, Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1, Ultra, Bioshock Infinite, which is, you know, so I mean, some of these games are a little bit old, like there's Crysis 3 is on here.
Yeah, so basically we didn't confirm all the numbers, but I kind of spot checked a couple.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, so
some of them, like Murdered Soul Suspect, is 14%. Crysis 3, this is funny to talk about, is 21%.
Yeah, I mean, Rise of the Tomb Raider, like the result we saw was actually a higher percent gain. We were testing it very high instead of, I think it was Ultra for them.
Okay.
But like we saw more. And then for GTA 5, we saw a little bit less. But like it's, you know, you know, seems legit, right?
Yeah.
It's not, I'm not being skeptical of it or anything like that. So, you know, with that, you definitely don't want to just leave a Ryzen system sitting imbalanced if you're a gamer. Like you're going to run into games that potentially, you know, so given this option of this other power profile, just do that. You know, it still runs it as if it was balanced, the Ryzen CPU, even though some people were, I think even in the comments they were jumping on, hey, this thing runs, it won't let the CPU go lower than 90%. Well, that doesn't mean that Ryzen will not go lower than 90% because Ryzen is able to do stuff internally. You know,
yes.
The thing is, you have to run it lower than 100 for it to be able to do that stuff.
Correct.
Is the point.
Yes. It needs to be in a non-max P state in order for its internal clock and power management to be able to access it and modify things and drop it down. It also means that the clock speeds being reported by something like CPU-Z or ADA64 are going to likely be incorrect.
Or even Windows Task Manager.
Yes, even Windows Task Manager, correct.
Yeah, especially Windows Task Manager, actually.
Especially. So we go over here, and if you're interested, you can see this chart that shows
I dug a little deeper
the
into
different defaults.
Yeah, I dug a little deeper into the profile, showing the numbers it is actually tweaking. So there wasn't any kind of trickery in this power profile. It wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary, like as far as what Windows was designed to be able to manipulate in a power profile, right? It's just that not all of those numbers are exposed to a person that just goes digging around in their profile. Right. So you kind of have to dig around in the registry and enable some other things and turn all this other stuff on so that you can actually view what all the other numbers are for the different plans. So I just kind of broke out, you know, there's dozens and dozens of those settings, but I just chose to only show the deltas for the ones that actually had deltas, for, you know, to tell this specific story about what this profile was doing for those that were, you know, wanted to get technical on it.
The summation from this is it's one of many things that AMD can tell people to do to try to improve their overall experience.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, this will
and it's easy enough to do.
Yeah.
We debated internally a lot here on like when I was doing my Ryzen 5 benchmarking. Do I run it at balanced or do I run it in high performance? I ended up running it in both, obviously based on the data you saw. and saw very little variance in my application selection. And it just, there are thousands of games out there, and the 8 that I picked, only one of them showed an actual change.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the ones that they saw the differences is like older titles. So
I mean,
I wouldn't expect you to test a bunch of older titles for a Ryzen 5 review. Like,
and that's fine. I'm not blaming it for any of that stuff. But like, it's very much a story of, okay, you've got your Ryzen. Now adjust your power profile.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about memory scaling, memory performance. Make sure you've got the latest BIOS and firmware, right?
Yeah.
Like all of these things are adding up to a little bit more performance in these different workloads.
Yeah.
And it's not anything we've had to ever ask people to do before.
That's true.
Right? When an Intel platform came out, you just whatever.
Yep.
And you didn't even worry about it.
And we were internally in the office I was really skeptical personally of just telling people blanketly to go in high performance mode.
It seemed like a bad idea.
That for me was like, no. Like that's a ridiculous ask.
Yeah.
Right. But replace it with a profile like this. Now I'm okay with it. Like that makes sense. That's still a balanced power profile. It does, it might run like a watt or two more, compared to what balance did.
The AMD one?
Yeah. We didn't do detailed power measurements for this.
They told me very explicitly that it was like 2 to 3 watts total measured power difference. Yeah. So
okay. Take the couple of watt difference, but you're getting much better performance in a decent amount of games, decent amount of situations, right?
All right. We've talked about Ryzen 5 for a very long time. Go to the review website, which is PCPer.com, the review website.
Yes.
And look up this stuff here, and you'll see our reviews. Before we get on to our next thing, the buyer's guide, I do want to mention on our Patreon, we have Adam, no last name, just Adam, pledged $10. Thank you, sir. That's amazing. We have EOIN. Ian? Deneen. D-I-N-E-E-N.
Okay.
Ian Deneen pledged $5. Thank you, sir. And Wayne Prolisco edited their pledge up to $5. So thank you guys very much. We really appreciate that. All right, so we talked about that for a long time. Let's sprint through the other stuff. We posted a spring 2017 buyer's guide. Sebastian did most of the work putting this together. This is basically just a general run through of the components we like today. Not specific selections, not like here's a build and here's a video putting it all together, but it's okay, here we like Ryzen 7. Here's the Core i7 equivalents, here's the pricing and some general discussion around it. Here's some GPUs we like. We like the 1080 on the high end, or 1080 Ti on the high end, 1060 at the low end. 480 is an interesting one because of all the rumors coming around about updates to the RX 480 in the relatively near future. Some motherboard selections from X370 to Z270. Your memory, we talk about higher speed memory as well for those people who are buying Ryzen processors. It doesn't have the effect on the Intel platform, but there's always the Ryzen parts. We talked about, I put the 960 Evo in here.
Yep.
I guess Evo or Pro. Evo's it's good enough.
Evo is pretty dang good.
Evo's pretty dang good. I like that. Let's put that on the box.
I mean,
Samsung 850 Evo for the SATA, and then for the lumbering, mass storage drives.
Hard drive?
Western Digital Red.
Well,
is listed on there. Sebastian has some cases and coolers that he recommends. We have mice. We have this little guy here, the SATA IDE hard drive adapter.
Sweet.
For those older hard drives you might have sitting around. The Lexar jump drive that Sebastian reviewed recently that he's still a big fan of. I like the G900 mouse from Logitech.
I too like the G900 mouse.
And then we brag about having battery backups that everybody should have for all of their computers that they actually like having around.
Actually, keep an eye. That's that same model we have in the office, right?
Yeah, it is.
Keep an eye on that thing because it occasionally goes on sale for almost half off.
It wasn't quite that much.
It was close.
It was like $140, but they have a different model that's the same specs. That it does not have the PFC feature.
Perfect sine wave.
Yes.
You want the perfect sine.
Do you? Okay. We got some switches. Everybody needs switches. And then
Cherry MX
headphones, webcams, that type of stuff. If you're in the spring buying mood, you got your 10 tax return back, or if you're like me and filed a tax extension and you don't have to pay for a little bit longer, feel free to go to that buying guide and see if there's anything worth picking up. So I am going to run through the next couple of these pretty quickly because
Run like the wind.
they're not on the show here. Alphacool, pronunciation again. Eisblock.
I think they're going for Eisblock.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I get it. I see, guys.
It's
Good
a
job.
block.
The XPX CPU Waterblock review. Obviously, Maury is the one who posted this here.
Nice looking block.
Yeah. I guess.
Is that a composite? Like the top is composite, I guess?
I don't know. You tell me.
Looks like just a molded plastic.
3D, more maybe
I
it was
think
3D.
it's Lexan.
Well, I mean, it's a black, so.
But he got it in not black. See this picture here.
Oh,
Yeah.
silver.
So let's see. Let me run through if you either love water cooling or you think it's overkill, let's see some of our performance features here. Cooler comparison testing. Thank goodness for Maury on all this stuff. So we've got the Alphacool Eisblock XPS default and alternate settings. And they appear to be, at least on this 5960X, at or amongst the best, falling behind maybe only the XSPC Raystorm Pro. We look at kind of max core usage. And then really good results again. XPSC Raystorm Pro kind of falling behind it a little bit.
Maury says the top is aluminum.
Aluminium.
Oh, all right.
Exactly.
We gotta prepare, Josh. We're gonna be in London soon.
Yes.
But this is, I think it's relatively inexpensive. $69 at Amazon.
It's pretty cheap for a water box.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
They usually run like 90, 100.
Yeah. Performance under strengths, performance under stock and overclocking conditions, build quality, mounting, out of the box support for current Intel and AMD offerings, including Ryzen. Weaknesses, the acetal top.
What the heck? Okay, well, I thought he what?
Acetal.
You said it was aluminium. I thought it was.
Yeah. He's a liar.
I think the top that's underneath the aluminum.
Oh yeah, the top
shroud
of the water block with the micro channel. Sure.
is yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
They should have just not put that part on there and just had the aluminum be the top. Doesn't make any sense. Well, unless they're worried about corrosion. Never mind.
Anodizing.
Aluminum right next to copper, and
Sure.
bad things happen.
Also today, Lee posted a review of the VIVO 24K 650 watt gold power supply.
It's a gold
I
power
will freely
supply.
admit that this is a brand new company to me, but they have the 24 karat and gold.
They sell like monitor arms and stuff.
Really?
Yeah. My roommate bought a VIVO like 4 monitor arm at some point. It's weird because like I saw this review and I thought about that. I'm like, that's weird.
So does this power supply
Power
have,
supply and monitor arms? That's kind of an odd
does the
crossover.
power supply have video in and video out on it or something? Or just,
No. Single
No,
12
it's
volt
got
RAM.
rounded corners.
seems to be
It
where their
does
name
have
came
rounded
from.
corners, yes. For safety, Jeremy, for safety.
It does look pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put too much into the look and style of a power supply
Yeah,
when
I know.
often, especially in newer chassis where they put in their own compartment with
Yep.
like a little box over it, so you don't even get to see it.
Yeah.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So, and Lee even says that VIVO is testing the waters with the introduction of 24K 200 or 650 watt power supply to offer an 80 plus gold certified, fully modular power supply at an affordable price to budget-minded consumers. So it gives you an idea of kind of what segment we're working into here. 5-year warranty at 105C rated caps. I'm sorry. A 5-year warranty would have made him happier. It is a 3-year warranty on this one. $58 on Amazon.com, $59 on Newegg, so clearly in the budget segment. But it did get good voltage regulation, quiet fan, up to 12 volt output, or up to 52 amp output on the 12 volt. Weaknesses being that 3-year warranty, relatively large for a 650 watt power supply, and the 85C rated caps instead of the 105C rated caps on that power supply. But you are getting what you pay for. It's still got a silver award from them. And again,
Yeah, that's kind of
$58.
inexpensive.
$58 is, yeah. Long term, we'll see. And
I've got a great idea for a water block.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, I do. I think I'm gonna make one out of nickel and lead, and then I'm gonna have some special cooling fluid through there. It's gonna be electric.
I get it. I see what you did there.
More like
Just gonna power the computer right off of the
It'll be a Peltier cooler.
the water block.
Can you push voltage in through the top of a processor and power it that way?
Jam it in there.
osmosis.
Like, is that? I mean, I don't know. Electric. It all goes to the same place.
Yes,
Well, then you're just going to have electroplating.
it's true. Hey, it's just
Custom
another battery.
electroplated
Do you-
CPUs.
Your
is
heat
it-
spreader will only last for
I was gonna
a
say,
few
is
weeks.
is your heat spreader more or less effective if you are applying the electric through the heat spreader?
You make the heat spreader into the Peltier cooler.
You just put a really big backplate on it to absorb some of the extra heat.
Okay, you actually put cooling underneath the pins, betwing the pins and the motherboard.
Exactly.
And
That's
then you
where
can
you put
ask
the
your
cooling
friends,
plate.
"Hey, touch the top of that and see if it's hot."
Not friends you like, I guess.
Keep pouring this water on it.
Sebastian posted a review of the Lian Li PC-Q7 Mini-ITX aluminium enclosure. I'm getting all prepped. So there it is. It's tiny.
Is it on a skewed angle? Is that its thing?
No, the
It's a
front
rhombus.
is sloped.
It's a parallelogram, whatever.
It's a rhombus.
Rhombus?
We're
Okay.
gonna have geometry debates in here again.
Again?
It's not a prism.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good.
This is an ROG. I don't know if it's not ROG sponsored, but it's like
It's got the logo on the side of the case.
it's like co-branded. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Mini tower chassis, 2 expansion slots. It apparently has room for 3.5-inch hard drives, 5 2.5-inch drives, even an external 5.25-inch drive bay. Is that a joke? What's that mean? An external
You plug
drive
in a
bay.
USB
Oh,
drive.
up
It's a
top up here?
CD style at the top.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Why do you consider that external?
No, it doesn't. It says slim ODD built in.
Okay. I gotcha. External.
but it looks like that's a
colon.
removable plate.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So that you could have
Nothing instead.
no, you could have a like
You think
5.25 thing. Like
I'm gonna say
I don't know if you could
not,
actually fit a
but
5.25
we'll look
drive.
I
inside.
don't think you can when you look at
Yeah.
the inside and the angle of it.
oh,
Brushed aluminum, USB 3.0 on the front. Tight quarters for working space, I'm sure.
It's small enough you don't have to hire a lorry.
Good. Keep getting the Britishisms going. That's good. I mean, clearly, when you look at this picture, it is simply a square chassis with the front
Chassis.
angular.
chassis.
The bonnet is
Yeah.
I was
slow
trying to
bonnet.
find a way to use the word buggy, but I don't.
Was Sebastian chuffed to bits with this
Might have
case?
been chafed. I
I
don't
mean,
know
he
about
was.
chuffed. I don't know. And so you can actually see. Oh, that's actually interesting. Underneath that faceplate is one of the
that's for an
drive
optical
cages.
drive.
Oh, it
But,
is.
yeah, that's optical drive cage.
Sort of like
But
a
it's
Fran.
still slim.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't look
And
like
you
it
can
fits a
still
full.
fit an SSD in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
Pre-mounted
put an
slim
SSD in that
ODD
spot.
bracket.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If you scroll down more, there's a picture.
Gotcha.
You got a Vertex 480 sitting there.
A vertically mounted power supply, obviously with some space constraints, but you can't. Is that a SSD being mounted? Oh, on the front.
That's
of it.
in place
Okay.
of the optical drive.
Gotcha. Room for water cooling up front. He always has the toughest jobs to deal with. These small, little, tiny cases. Good thing he's a tiny,
He has
tiny
small
man.
hands.
All right. Well, we just went there. You can see the graphics card installed here. It is close to the bottom, but even if you have a blower style cooler, it's vented along the bottom, so it should be able to get air in from the bottom.
Yep, and the case
right?
does have
Cat hair,
feet,
dog hair,
so
dust.
it's-
That might be a problem
That's
for
true. It's
you.
going to go straight in.
I
Oh,
would
no,
just,
the GPU will just suck it up and blow it out the back.
yeah,
It's fine.
perfectly clean, no residue left behind. I'm sure.
Done.
I would just tell you to clean more, I guess. I don't know what else to say about that.
Well, it's so small that you can just flip it over and vacuum it.
Well, the idea is it's small enough to be sitting on your desk probably as opposed to sitting on your floor.
True.
That
As
helps
long as it's-
significantly
yeah.
with dust.
And you can see
And this would make it really hard to describe because it is about the same size as a bread box.
Yep. The power cord comes in the back, and it actually has a little extension to plug into the power supply because the power supply cable is at the top. In terms of Temperatures, he did some testing with the Core i5 6600K and the R9 290X reference that you saw there, and gives you some idle load temperatures as well as noise levels. It's okay. It's loud, right, for a reference cooler, even for one of those older reference coolers. But you are working in tight space where the fan has to spin a lot to get that air to come through that bottom vent.
And there's not a lot of case in the way of shielding you from the sound.
Correct. $189, so pretty pricey. Strengths, premium all aluminum construction, room for full-size components, excellent cooling. Weaknesses being limited storage space with some component choices, and would like to see a tempered glass window at this price. I would agree. So $189 if you wanna, I guess.
Here it is. Come and get it.
We'll mention this quickly, though I don't have any hands-on experience with it yet, so I don't know how much we can talk about it. But
It's
the
on
Windows.
this.
Sorry.
It's on this.
It's Windows 10.
Yeah,
It's
the
fine.
Windows 10 Creator. Oh, you installed it on your machine. The Windows 10
Yeah,
Creators
the
update.
best thing about it
yes,
is it adds a new mail icon to your taskbar
It's true.
Yeah.
that
does.
you immediately unpin.
Yeah.
And in my case, I must have had a bug something or another. It showed up, and I'm like, did what everybody else on the planet probably did. And, oh, what's that crap? Unpin.
right.
It stayed there. Like, the icon went away. And, like, it was to the left of other things that were running, to the right of it, and it just left a blank spot on the taskbar. And I was like, what the heck is that? And I tried dragging it over.
Reserved for Clippy.
Yeah, basically. And I was dragging across a blank spot on the taskbar that the other icons were shuffling around. And it
Sounds
was just-
reasonable.
yeah.
I haven't installed it on any of my machines yet, but I will. Obviously, the thing that's probably most important to our group and community is the game mode that they is now publicly available. This is a. They haven't really gone into a whole bunch of detail, and I've tried to read a bunch of stories about it, and everybody
3D
has
MS Paint. Come on.
everybody has a bunch of anecdotal. Oh, somebody said this type of thing, or we assume it's doing
Yeah,
this.
nobody has technical.
The general assumption is that they are prioritizing the processes of the game over the other processes.
Yep.
Like setting it to a higher priority than just a normal priority.
Yep. And they might be context.
As long as you got it from Windows Store.
They might be context switching
Does it
those
support
processes less
UWP
often.
natively?
Like they might be switching those processes around, juggling them from
Correct.
core to core less
Correct.
often. It's possible.
It's possible. Jeremy, it doesn't support UWP only.
No, not only.
Oh.
But it's built in. If you were running a UWP game, game mode will automatically give you benefits. If you're not, they've provided code to developers so that they can take advantage of it, but wait for the patch.
But I think if you run
You can enable it on any Win32 game.
Absolutely, but you might not notice a difference. It might be like upping the power state on an AMD Ryzen.
Well, yeah, there are plenty of questions. There have been testing was done like kind of when the creators update first went out to the early ring sub users.
Yeah.
And a lot of there were some people that showed like literally no differences between enabling it and disabling it. And I think the more recent data I'm seeing is that it's getting a little bit better. And the kind of summation that I've seen thus far, again, not my own testing, can't verify, is that minimum frame rates appear to be going up while average frame rates appear to be staying the same.
Staying the same.
Which would kind of jive with the context switching kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I put in some questions to Microsoft, and I'm hoping that they actually answer me. But it's like I would love to talk with somebody from a technical standpoint about what is this actually doing.
Yeah.
Right. How does it recognize what threads it is? Is there a whitelist blacklist thing? Is it simply like, oh, if you're playing a game, we're going to pick the processes that are most active then, and kind of group those as you want to keep these active or higher priority.
Do I need to change the name of my executables again?
Right. You can see if that's the case. Because I mean, the way you enable it in any app is you do the Windows G, I guess, and it brings up the menu, and you can put it in a game mode like while you're in the game. And so and I think there is a setting if you go into the main settings and you can enable it globally. I think you can. And so I would like to talk about what the differences are there. And again, maybe we've got some upcoming GPU testing to do. Maybe kind of tack on some creators update for that testing as well. I mean, there's other stuff in creators update. There's the ink support, right?
Yep.
I don't know what else. Anything else interesting?
Streaming stuff.
Oh yeah, you can stream through the game mode, the game bar stuff now.
They changed your default command prompt to what's a who's it?
I mean,
PowerShell.
What do you mean by your defeat?
Yeah.
What do you mean by your default command
launch
prompt?
it from within PowerShell.
It's default in two places. Your context menu one is changed.
Yeah.
And you have to like tweak registry to change it back. And then there's an option in the settings to if you right click the start button and you get the command prompt thing, that changed too.
So it just goes to PowerShell?
Yeah.
Huh.
You know what rocks about PowerShell?
I mean, it says it's PowerShell.
It's blue.
Instead of saying command prompt here.
great.
So much nicer than
But
black.
Windows doesn't have a default thing to change. They changed the menu option in two
they
places.
changed
They
it
didn't
so that-
remove anything about command prompt.
Sure. Command prompt is still there.
Microsoft never removes anything. They just hide it.
Well,
You dig around in the registry,
They
you'll get it back.
removed Solitaire and Minesweeper or replaced them with,
Okay, I
with
take it back, you're right.
ad-supported versions that you have to pay for the un-ad-supported version.
Mother.
And Texas Hold'em, too.
No.
I didn't even know Texas Hold'em was in there.
It was supposed to be on one of the versions of, I think it was 8.
Uh-oh.
It was originally with Vista Ultimate.
Uh-huh.
That was it. It was the Ultimate.
See, it's not warm
Every
now.
time I go
Time to
walking
the
down the
next-
sidewalk.
Uh-oh.
See, now I can't shut it off.
Just throw it.
Then it's just going to make that sound from across the office.
Yeah, but the
It's
mic
actually
won't pick it up.
It's actually getting a good beat now. Oh, no, it's not. Okay. That was a mistake. So that's the creators update. It's available for free downloads now, right? For Windows. I think actually this laptop just prompted me for it, and I had to tell it to
I mean,
wait.
they would have.
Yeah, if you don't get the prompt, you can head over and get it through the requested update.
I imagine they pushed it on Patch Tuesday.
Well, they pushed some on Patch Tuesday. Not everybody.
Oh, interesting.
Of course.
They're stepping it up.
Let's see. Time for the news story. The next story. That's time to talk about the Titan XP. What?
Yeah, you know me.
That XP.
So NVIDIA very quietly, as in I got no email from them before this happened. I got no, there was no press briefing. There was no, hey, do you want a card to test? There was none of that. I got an email from a reader who said, hey, by the way, this is up. And they launched a new Titan X with a lowercase p at the end of it. That is the now fully unlocked GP 102 GPU.
You know, the best thing about this is they've got Brian Del Rizzo with one of those silver pens, and for every Titan X, they do a BIOS flash to it, and he writes a small p on it.
So what is a fully unlocked GP 102? It is the extra 256 CUDA cores that were missing from the 1080 Ti, essentially, right?
12 gigabytes of RAM.
12 gigabytes of RAM, a 10.7 increase in boost shader capacity compared to the Quadro. Oh wait, no, the Quadro P6000 uses the same GPU as opposed to the 1080 Ti. I guess is what we're comparing it to now. And it is an increase from 480 gigabytes per second to 547.7 gigabytes per second, a 14% increase in memory bandwidth, which is impressive. It is available now, only sold through NVIDIA's website. It is $1,200, which is the same price that the previous Titan X Pascal launched at, right? $1,200, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. Which is now the 2016 model listed of the NVIDIA Titan X.
It's got to be the last good version until the Titan 7. You won't want the Titan Vista.
Yeah, you're going to want
the
the Titan 7S.
Yeah.
At that.
You're not going to want the Titan Vista. So you might as well just buy one.
It's really weird, right? I mean, I guess when they launched the 1080 Ti, it was so much faster than the 1080, and then also it was faster than the Titan X Pascal version that had been released, which, by the way, many people call the Titan XP. I never did because I hated it. I still don't like this, but whatever.
I think this is just a tough lesson from NVIDIA. saying you,
I'm
you
still-
call our
I'm
brand,
still
you call
waiting.
our brands what they are. Call our products what we name them.
Or
You
else.
don't make up names. Make you look like fools.
Yeah, I'm
And
still
stop capitalizing
waiting
all of our
for the.
letters.
Josh,
Damn
go.
it. I'm still waiting for the Titan X/2, even though it's going to be really competitive and compatible.
IBM's going to
It'll-
buy it and kill it.
Yeah.
Jeremy, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, and stop spelling our letters all capitalized. Inside joke from me.
Yeah, apparently. So I don't have one of these. I've asked. I don't think they're sending them out to anybody. I'm not going to buy one because I know exactly how it's going to perform. If you're a gamer, you can buy a 1080 Ti for $700.
I mean, they're not
Unless
trying.
you've
They're not
got
even
money
trying
to
to
burn.
They're not trying to push us for gamers.
No, they're
so
not.
it's
But
like-
I think there was probably the debate of why even have a Titan. Sorry, it says it's time to move on. I guess.
Okay.
Why even have a Titan if it's not the fastest card in the GeForce line?
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
So
maybe
I
you've
get
got to
it.
test your readiness for 8K.
Maybe you do. And if you wanted to do that,
Why does it distort?
well, because the batteries are low. I don't
Yeah.
say. You could use. Oh no. You could use. You could use the UNIGINE Superposition GPU stress test benchmark, which does run at 8K. Jeremy, what is this thing? Jeremy?
Jeremy.
The mute button. Apparently, it's very pretty. I haven't seen it yet. I think Al was saying he did.
I was toying around with it.
I ran it.
But yeah, nice. I mean, it's only like $1,500. But yeah, so it's got a huge
Hit your mute
variety
button.
of. Hello again, Intel. Huge variety of tests you can do from old basic YouTube resolutions all the way up to 8K 60 frames a second, which good luck finding hardware that will display it, let alone power it.
Right.
But Unity has been a sort of a benchmark, but we haven't had a new one in a long time.
Correct.
We've had
Really
Heaven
the
and
future
Valley, but yeah, Valley's been out for a while.
That's been a long time.
Yeah.
And Heaven. Like those were the two. So now they've also got VR testing because, of course, you really need to start doing that. So
Yeah.
they'll tell you about superposition. What was the other one? Not frame drops. What's the other thing you benchmark for in VR?
Drops and warps and stuff like that.
Warps. That's what I think it was. Yeah. So it'll do superpositions and warps, which is going to tell you whether you need a bucket when you're doing VR. You're going to be fine. So it's nice to see a brand
I do
new
want to try
benchmark.
that out. I do want to try that out because there have not been any in VR any in VR benchmarks yet.
3D marks?
Did you run
They've
that
got
in
the orange
VR?
room and the blue room and that, but
Yeah, there was the 3D Mark VR version.
Yeah, there's a.
I thought it was just a demo. Did it actually give you a score?
They came out with an actual benchmark, I think.
yeah,
I don't think the VR thing gives you a score.
I thought it was just a
it
demo.
does.
Yeah, I think you just to walk around in the because I didn't.
the
I
low
didn't
tier one, because they've got 3 colors now. It was orange, blue, and I can't think what the middle one was. But the basic orange one just lets you
Chartreuse.
look at it, of course.
Mauve.
I will say that
Confused.
Burnt sienna.
Leave her alone.
the demo itself was pretty. The one you could interact with was pretty cool to play with.
Yeah, I want to try this. It's just on one of my lists of 300 things to get to, but
Yeah.
very cool. And you did mention it is a free download. There is a free downloadable version.
Yeah, you don't have to pay the $1,500 for the full version.
No, no, no.
$1,500?
It's $20, Jeremy. $1,500 to license the engine.
No, it's
Oh,
$20
sorry, I was
US,
reading that wrong.
$1,500 Canadian.
Yeah, no, it's $20 for
Oh,
the.
yeah, it's about $20 American right now.
All right, a couple of more things here. We're going to talk to Alan about storage.
Yeah.
Western Digital announced the USB Type-C My Passport SSD. Very cleverly named My Passport SSD.
Well, my passport's just all their external USB thingies, right? Portable USB drives.
Okay.
You might notice it's a little longer than usual.
Maybe they're compensating for something.
No, it's actually. I'm pretty sure. What's that cartoon character that dog?
Muttley. Every time it's
Muttley.
still Muttley.
All right. Anyway, I'm pretty sure there is a Western Digital blue SATA M.2 SSD in there.
What makes you think that? Performance numbers?
Yeah.
Because he threw one on the ground really
and the
hard,
shape.
and out popped an M.2 SATA.
That would be a giveaway.
I mean, there are only so many SSDs that Western Digital makes.
True.
So far, there's a blue.
True.
And there's a black.
All true.
Well, the blue is the SATA model, and they make it an M.2 and 2.5 inch, and I don't think that's a 2.5 inch enclosure.
I doubt it.
So it's process of elimination. There you go.
Okay.
That's probably what's in there.
So we're talking $99 for the 256 gig model, according to Best Buy. 512 gig models, $199. 1 terabyte, $399.
Yeah.
Is that in?
I think it's like a few bucks more than just the M.2.
Oh, really?
It doesn't meet
Oh, okay.
I
Ryan's
think so.
law, but it's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean,
Available. They were available as of the 14th, or no, will be available for the 14th of April.
It just seems so odd to have a drive they specifically market as USB 3.1 Gen 2 that's a SATA drive.
look, that's the exact same thing. That's the Samsung T3.
That's M-SATA?
It's an M-SATA.
It's not a Gen 2
850.
drive.
It's got a USB Type-C cable on it.
That doesn't mean it's Gen 2, Alan.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
I
still
know.
5 gigabit.
I know.
Yeah. If they label this,
They specifically label this as Gen 2.
Okay, that just means the chip speaks Gen 2.
Yes, but why would you put a chip that speaks Gen 2 in there for more money if
with the SATA thing on the other
Yeah.
end of it? No,
it's confusing?
Yeah,
I could see
know.
why they would do
Marketing.
it because they can have that checkbox, but
Yeah,
they don't list speeds anywhere, so I'm intrigued.
it looks okay.
I mean, it looks cool.
Yeah.
Oh, they do speeds up to 515 megabytes a second. So,
That's SATA.
yeah.
Well, there you go. Now we have our answer. But we have another SSD as well. ADATA announces the XPG SX7000.
Yeah, this is going
Line.
to be Silicon Motion 2260 controller.
Okay. Have we tested one of those before?
Probably Micron Flash. We haven't tested this specific drive, but we tested similar.
No, that controller we
like
have.
that controller, similar kind of
NVMe drive,
configurations. Realize this is the 7000 series is sort of like the Evo to the SX 8000, of which there's another model that's higher up than this from ADATA. Is my point.
The SX8000. Okay, I got
There's an SX 8000.
All right.
That's sort of like their Pro. This is sort of like their Evo. Same kind of deal. The controller's the same, except this uses TLC flash with SLC caching,
Okay.
whereas the 8000 was like straight MLC. It's the same exact kind of
Gotcha.
thing, right? So
So let me
It's
ask you
not
this.
SATA
Alan.
Express.
So there was some debate about like warranties and like this comes with a 5-year warranty, whereas a Samsung part, that's the equivalent part, which is like the 960 Evo, right? Only comes with a 3-year warranty.
Right.
So there is that, right? But realize that even if the prices were matched identically, or cost per gig was identical, the Silicon Motion 2260 performance compared to a 960 Evo is still, I mean, they're getting closer, but it's still not a direct comparison.
Okay.
Like the 960 Evo really just like dominates everything right now. So
How about the Phison controllers compared?
it's also similar. Like basically there's Samsung and then there's all the other guys. And it's not necessarily the controller's fault as much as it is Samsung 3D VNAND just is way better at performance than all of the
Okay.
first iterations of the, other companies trying to come out with their version of 3D, whatever. Especially if this one uses Micron's 3D TLC is not the fastest. Like they went for more capacity per die on their first round than they went for, performance. Whereas Samsung's, the way that they're designing and building their flash, the performance is just amazing for what it is, right? And they've that's given them the lead on quite a while, for quite a while so far.
And it continues.
One other question.
Yes.
Yeah.
One other.
Yes.
Is it just me, or is ADATA really starting to come out with a lot of solid state products in a pretty short period of time?
I mean, they've been like this for a while. I will say that my bigger concern with them is in the past they've come out with a lot of products and then it was hard to actually find them a few months later. There have been times where I went to price check stuff and like couldn't even find, half of the capacities of their lineup of something on Amazon, for example. So I hope that gets better. I imagine it would, if with their cadence increasing like this and then moving into what would be a much more popular product like this, M.2 product.
Yeah. Are they 10 cents a gig?
No.
Moving on.
Crap.
It's time for our hardware software picks of the week. Up first is me, and I'm going with the Ryzen 5 1600. This is $219. There's only 8 left in stock on Amazon, guys. And you pair this with a $110 motherboard like the one I used, which was the MSI B350 Tomahawk board. And $120 for 16 gigs of 3200 memory, 2933 memory. And you have a killer 6-core, 12-thread system up and running. And this also comes with the Wraith Spire cooler, which I was pretty impressed with as well. I just realized I didn't put any commentary on that in the review, and I should have, because the cooler actually was surprisingly good. The 1600 versus the 1600X, you're going to pay $30 or $40 more for the X version, and the only difference is clock speed, and you can just overclock this a little bit and you'll be fine, or not, and I still think you'll be fine in terms of all of the performance metrics that we have looked at. And I think what I'm going to do personally is probably use an 1800X that I have here and build myself a Ryzen 7 system and just replace my current rig with that
use it
going forward. And just, I can't imagine a scenario where I would be disappointed, but let's just find out. Do all the crap I do on a daily basis on it, and I'm sure it'll be great. But for significantly less amount of money, the Ryzen 5 1600 is less than half the price of that 1800X, and makes a very compelling case for a consumer looking to build either a PC that does gaming or productivity or work or both or all. That's my pick. So that's me, Jeremy. I believe
I was going to contradict you on the RAM price, although apparently
okay.
this deal is incredibly popular, because when I posted it earlier, it was $80. It's now $90 with one left. But 8 gigs of DDR4 3200 for currently $90.
Well, that's 8 gigs. I was going 16 gigs.
Well, and you can double it once they've got stock back in. But if you're going for a lower end system, and this is what I put it in, was our sort of mid range. You've still got 2 slots to upgrade later on when you've got $90 back in your pocket.
Yep.
But DDR4 at high frequencies is not necessarily as expensive as you might expect.
Interesting. So if we go down to 2600,
the 32 gig one's going to be a bit more expensive.
Yeah,
let me throw a link at you.
Oh, don't throw
and
anything.
Maybe think about this one, because a buddy of mine did this.
Wink, wink.
And apparently this is just rebranded G-Skill X memory. It's in the
I can't see
Slack.
that on this computer, but I'll believe you.
And I put it in IRC.
Oh, I still can't see it on this computer, but that's fine. All right, so $120 for 16 gigs of 3200 memory. EVGA
and
branded.
I know that
DIMM,
for
so
a fact it works with an AMD 1700 at 3200 megs.
You know for a fact it does, or you do not know?
It does.
There you go. And I think that's
did
something
you run it on this motherboard?
Well, maybe not that mother, but the Tai Chi.
There you go.
Yeah.
I will say that obviously prices are going to vary based on like Newegg, Amazon, all these different types of things. But I would pay particular attention to, if you don't want to be the first one to try it, find somebody who has tried memory like this on a Ryzen platform and can kind of verify that it works, because they're, especially as you get into higher speeds, at least initially, especially with the Ryzen 7s, there were some hit or miss places where memory did and did not work. But if Josh says his friend tested this out and it works fine,
it is my friend. It's a guy down in Dallas. It's not me.
Wink,
I'm too
wink,
cheap.
nudge, nudge. Say no more. Say no more.
But that's at Micro Center, and it's EVGA memory. Interesting. I honestly didn't even know they did this.
At Micro Center. I think that's the only place that sells it.
Gotcha. Speaking of Josh, which I wasn't, but now I am.
Okay.
What's your pick?
I don't know. I forgot. Let's see here. It's a motherboard. Okay, it's the MSI X370 SLI Plus. It's one of the less expensive, not BioStar X370. So if you want to run with a Ryzen 5, this is a nice price point. It's $20 less than the Asus Prime. It has similar features, good build quality, decent power phases, and all that other fun stuff. Good audio, everything you kind of need. I mean, it's the basic X370 board. I think it's got a single M.2, and that's fine.
I think they all do, yeah.
Well, I mean, there are others that have double M.2s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like I think the Crosshair.
Does that, Ken? Does the Crosshair have multiple M.2?
I don't know.
Okay.
Anyway,
We've only got two.
There are others that have multiple M.2. But if you're gonna go low price and you want potential SLI, what?
Does this motherboard have HDMI? Oh, right, because it's an AM4. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that means that you
video
can put a
output?
Bristol Ridge in there.
Got it.
Fun.
Indeed.
Anyway,
$139 is not bad. Yeah.
No.
And you can use, again, Ryzen 7 or Ryzen 5 with motherboard purchase like that. So, and it says right here supports DDR4 3200 plus memory.
And they just released the Agisa 1.04 or 10.0.0.4 or whatever that
1004.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that has the better latencies and support for more memory speeds.
Fantastic. All right, who's up next? Alan?
Me.
What do you got?
A Commodore 64 game.
Oh, yeah.
That was made in 2013. Don't close your eyes and fall asleep on me. All right. So, anybody who used to play a bunch of Commodore 64 games, if you did, you probably played a game called Bruce Lee, which is one of the funner ones.
That's not a word.
More funner.
Yeah.
I can't show this webpage.
so-
Why not?
Words beginning with
I didn't
F.
want to crap a bunch of links into the thing, but so there was a guy named Bruno Marcos who makes like kind of newer versions of games, but not on the same platform. Mm-hmm. Like so, this guy made Bruce Lee 2 on it was a Windows game. It was like a port of the Commodore
of course.
thing. Well, the problem was he added a bunch of features to the game that wouldn't fit into the memory of the Commodore.
Okay.
Right, so he just he kind of ported it.
He made a better game.
Made a better game, right? But then somebody else took on the challenge and ported his port back to the Commodore, fully featured. So basically, the guy made added features to things like that the original authors decided to not do because obviously there's just limitations in how the platform can only handle so much. You're talking about a Commodore 64 here,
right?
So
Only handle so much Bruce Lee.
yeah, basically. Well, there's some pretty funny additions in here. It was the game, you're Bruce Lee, and then there was there's two characters you're up against, and every time you go to another screen, the same two characters show up, right? This guy added more characters to the game. He actually added Chuck Norris. And the dude has in very, very 8-bitty pixely animation, very crude animation, but has Chuck Norris's signature kicks.
Is he wearing jeans?
He just got no shirt on. He's got the white
boots?
pants.
Okay. All right.
The typical Chuck Norris kind
He
of.
kicked so hard your
typical
calming
Chuck Norris
crashes.
to me is Texas Ranger.
Well,
So he's wearing jeans and cowboy
He's wearing
boots. damn it.
slacks.
But so there's I
Tight
put
jeans and
I put a
fly.
video link in the show notes, and there's a long play where a guy basically plays through the entire version of the new one. So if you've played the old one and you don't want to mess around with an emulator or whatever, you just want to watch someone else play through it. I laughed out loud when he got to a screen and Chuck Norris showed up instead of the other two characters that usually show up.
There's a white paper on the making of Bruce Lee 2 as well.
Yeah, that's the guy that ported it.
Oh, okay.
It's describing his effort, and then it's.
This kind of reminds me of that competition, the 64K 3D applications.
Yeah. Yeah, how big
where
of
people
a
do amazing things.
Yeah, how big of a demo? It was game demo makers were
Yeah.
just making amazing, graphical experiences and demos to just fit into this tiny amount of memory.
Just goes to show everyone, if you need to throw more metal at it, you're a bad programmer.
Yeah, I was just shocked that
No one should ever need more than.
I heard about this
128K
when
memory.
the guy did it. When the guy did the Windows version, and then I basically just forgot about it. And it turned out like less than a year later or something, this other guy had ported it back to C64. That just kills me.
Now, how do you get it on a 5 1/4 inch floppy to put in your C64 or tape?
They got images. They have the images.
But how do you?
What do you mean?
How do you get the image from your Windows PC onto said floppy?
Oh, I forget exactly what. There's a person that makes an interface that you can actually.
You etch it with a pen.
Yeah.
No, you punch it.
The killer
I guess you could
is-
write it
patterns.
Punch.
the real kicker is that the 1541 floppy drive on Commodore had the same CPU as the Commodore.
Yes, I remember
That
that.
seems excessive
It was
and
necessary.
expensive.
The same 1 megahertz CPU was required to drive the floppy drive. Yeah.
Distributed computing.
Yeah, that's what it was. It's SLI. All right, that's it for the show, everybody, tonight. Thank you for joining us. PCPer.com/podcast. That's where you can go find our show notes, links to all the stories we talked about, the picks we had here at the end, MP3 files, RSS links to subscribe, video files, YouTube links, all that stuff. The Patreon is listed there. That is a spot to go to find all of the stuff that you need. So we'll be back next week with another episode, and thank you guys for hanging out. I'm Ryan Schrout.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Josh Walrath.
And I'm Alan Malentano.
Good night. If you enjoyed this content, consider supporting in-depth technical content by contributing at patreon.com/PCPer.